You've seen the list. Everyone has. 35 jobs AI will replace by 2030. 15 jobs that won't exist in 5 years. Pick your number, pick your year. The list is basically the same one, recycled every few months with a scarier thumbnail. And if you're honest, you've probably scrolled it looking for your own job, just to check, just to see where you land. But here's the truth. Nobody ever goes back and checks these lists later. Nobody publishes, remember the last list from 2 years ago? Here's how wrong it was. So today, let's actually do that. Back in the 1970s and 80s, when ATMs started showing up outside banks, the prediction was simple. Machines can count money and dispense cash. Bank tellers are done. Obvious, right? Except teller employment didn't drop, it grew for decades. Because it turned out ATMs made each branch cheaper to run. So banks opened more branches. And each one still needed a person for everything that wasn't just counting cash. Opening accounts, sorting out problems, actually talking to a customer who was upset or confused. The prediction wasn't crazy, it was just incomplete. It looked at what the machine could do and stopped there, instead of looking at everything else the job actually was. That's not an isolated case either. It's basically the pattern every time somebody confidently predicts a job is about to get replaced by technology. Here's the actual reason these predictions keep missing, and it's simpler than you think. Every job, whatever the title says, is really a bundle of two different things. There's the task, the actual doing, writing the code, designing the graphic, drafting the email, building the spreadsheet. That's the part you can point a camera at and say, look, a machine can do that now. And then there's the judgment. Knowing whether the thing you just made is actually right. Right for this business. Right for this audience. Right for this moment. Knowing when the technically correct answer is still the wrong one. Every one of those jobs AI will replace lists is measuring the first thing. Almost none of them are measuring the second. And the second one is usually most of what the job actually was. So what does that actually look like in a real job? Take a marketing designer, someone who makes graphics and brochures for a company. The task half of that job, laying out a graphic, picking a font, generating a clean design, is genuinely dramatically easier now than it was just 3 years ago. That part really isn't up for debate. If you told that designer from 5 years ago what today's tools can do in just 30 seconds, they wouldn't have believed you. But the judgment half of that job was never really about the software. It was about understanding what this specific brand needed to look and feel like. Where a piece of design would actually get used, and by whom. And what it needed to accomplish once it got there. Knowing the difference between a graphic that's technically well made and one that's actually right for the room it's about to walk into. A designer who understands the business is now dramatically faster at the task half, and just as necessary for the judgment half as they always were. Same story, different job title, over and over. A developer who can now generate working code in seconds is still the one who has to know whether that code should exist in the first place, and what happens if it's wrong in production. A customer service rep, whose replies get drafted instantly, is still the one who knows when a customer needs an actual human decision, not a policy-correct answer. An analyst who gets a report built in minutes is still the one who knows whether the numbers actually mean what they appear to mean. Same shape, every time. The task gets faster, the judgment doesn't get automated. It gets more valuable because now it's the part nobody else can copy. If this is the actual pattern, why does every jobs AI will replace video still get made the same scary way? Because 35 jobs are about to disappear is a much easier headline than Every job just quietly split into two halves, and you need to figure out your own ratio. One of those fits in a thumbnail. The other one actually requires you to think for a second. But easier to headline doesn't mean more true. It just means more clicks. Here's the part that's actually good news, and it's not just "don't worry, you'll be fine." If nobody can reliably predict which job titles survive, then chasing the safe job on somebody's list was never a great strategy anyway. You'd just be betting on someone else's guess. The better move is figuring out your own ratio. How much of what you do all day is task and how much is judgment? Because the task half is where AI can make you dramatically faster right now. Today, with tools you probably already have access to. And the judgment half is where you are always actually valuable. It just used to be buried under hours of manual task work that hid how much of your real contribution was the thinking, not the doing. Getting faster at the task half isn't a threat to the judgment half. It's what finally gives it room to be the whole job. So here's something worth doing this week, and it takes about 10 minutes. Write down 5 things you did at work in the last few days. Just 5. Next to each one, mark it as task or judgment. Was this the doing, or was this the deciding? You'll probably find your list is much more task-heavy than you assumed. And that's normal, and it's not a bad sign. It's just showing you exactly where AI can pick up speed for you. Then ask the real question. Of the judgment items on that list, the ones only you could actually make the call on, which one could you spend more time on if the task work around it took a fraction of the time that it used to? If you're not evaluating a current job, but instead a job you're considering, same exercise. Look at your role and ask the same thing. How much of it is task and how much of it is judgment? Because the task half is exactly what's getting easier for everyone to fake right now. Which means it's a weak thing to lead with in an interview or a portfolio. The judgment half, the decisions you've actually made, the outcomes you actually understand, is the part that's harder to copy and worth putting front and center. Either way, that's the actual answer to will AI replace my job? Not a list somebody else made about your job title. Your own list about what you actually do or what you're about to do. If this kind of thing is useful to you, figuring out how to actually think about AI instead of just reacting to headlines about it, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.